Good morning. I started using Orchard at around the beginning of last year. We've spent the last I've spent the last few years helping a startup called Stream Media Group. We've been trying to create a streaming media website. Our original idea was more of a media sharing kind of upload and social networking site, which was very wide in scope. And around the beginning of last year, we kind of came up with a new design with a narrower focus that was an easier target to achieve. And that was around the time I discovered Orchard and made the decision to begin building a new version of our site using Orchard. So I'm going to show you the current version of our website. Now this is version 1. Now, unfortunately, the resolution is slightly lower than I expected. Okay, we wanted to have our version 2 released before this weekend, but we weren't quite able to do that. A few things happened outside of our control. So there were a couple of new things that I was hoping to be able to show that I won't be able to. The idea of this website is that it's a TV station, so we have a number of different channels of video content. It's going to be it's free to watch, and it's going to be advertising supported. The Wi-Fi connection here is a little bit slow. Now, I think on this old version, on the latest version, the background image resizes. We've actually done our own, Sebastian talked about the image processing module. We've actually got our own version of that kind of pipeline. And on the latest version, the background image actually gets resized as well and doesn't take that long to download. So you can see there's a number of different channels here that are linked to. And what you can see on this screen is a lot of different relationships. So the overall content item is the channel, and that then has a relationship to a number of child items. They can be more channels, or they could be content, they could be videos. Really, they could be any content from the database. There's then a relationship to a background image. There's a relationship to a thumbnail, which will be used when this is displayed as a channel in one of these boxes. There's other relationships going on that you can't see. So what we have here is a lot of relationships between content. There's even relationships to menu items. This was built before the new navigation system, and we actually had our hierarchical menu uses relationships between content items to build the menu. Can I just get a quick show of hands? Who's a fan of zombie films? That's pretty good. So there's a reason why I'm showing this one. It's one of the few films that will actually work in America. This is a UK-based website, so a lot of the content is UK restricted. So you can see there a video playing. I think it takes a while for the credits to start fading in, and also because of the Wi-Fi connection, it's streaming from the UK, so it's not working brilliantly well there. Something we later on need to do is have lower quality versions of the video that it can drop down to if it's struggling with streaming. We haven't quite got that yet, but obviously it's mainly targeted at the UK, and over there it works perfectly. So. Something else that a few people have mentioned is media management, and obviously we have a media management system going on here, so to be able to manage the video content. You can see that video is actually a content item. It has a description, it has tags, it's got the comments part there, it's got the ratings part, so that's a full-blown content item. So really there's two major things going on here that we've tackled with modules, and so there's media management representing media as content items, and then there's the relationships, the connections between content. And both of those problems I've tackled with modules that I've released that you may have heard of. those modules are mechanics and media garden. I'm sure a lot of people might have seen these modules mentioned, but not been quite sure what they did. And quite frankly, a lot of the versions that have been up there have been buggy and have no documentation, and people might not have understood how to use them. So I'm going to quickly show how some of this works in the back end to give you an idea of what these modules can do. A big caveat is that the current versions on the Orchard Gallery are very out of date and don't work with Orchard 1.5. However, the versions on the Codeplex sites for those projects do work with Orchard 1.5. This is our production site, so I'm going to be very careful not to break anything while I'm showing you this. Okay. There were a couple of other things I didn't mention about the features. Just quickly, the video player is a Flash video player using RTMP streaming, similar to sites like YouTube or Netflix use, which means things like I can skip straight to the middle of the film before it's all downloaded. We're also iPhone compatible. It has to use a different video player, which we actually that uses Bertrand's theme switcher to deliver an override for the player template on iOS. It uses a slightly different streaming protocol. And another feature that the website will have, I mentioned, is advertising. I can't demo that today. That's one of the things that slightly held us up releasing the new website. But it will be pre-roll and mid-roll kind of advertising. The video will pause, an advert will play. Right. If I go to right, you can see here I've got a number of content types for things like video, image. I think the first thing is probably to show you Media Garden. In fact, no, first of all I'll create a channel. So stream is our word for a channel. It's kind of, that's a word that's been around for a while in our terminology. So I'm going to create a new one and not touch any of the existing ones. Okay, yeah, this is also on the, this was pre-auto route. This kind of shows you how old this version is. The new version, the version we're about to release is Orchard 1.5. It uses auto route for all the routing. This was, at this point, it was kind of my own custom solution to get around the limitations of the old routing system. Now, okay, here you see the first bit of the mechanics UI. This is one of the default UIs you get with mechanics when you start creating relationships is a list of checkboxes if you're allowing connections to many items. In the latest version, I've been experimenting with a kind of Ajax search. So you start typing, a list of content pops up for you to select which items you're linking to, because obviously it gets really problematic when we've got huge amounts of things to link to there. The other thing it will surface, if it's just a one-to-one link, it'll automatically surface a drop-down list instead. So I'll show you how these content types are, how the relationships are configured. So that content type was a stream. On the content type editor for a stream, you'll see there's nothing here to indicate any of those relationships. If I flip back here, you can see stream contents. That's a relationship. That's which items are appearing in the channel. thumbnail, featured in, menu items. It's got all of these relationships here. Background image. None of them are showing up in the content type editor for that content type, which might seem a little bit strange. What it's got here is something called the sockets part, and that's something that comes with mechanics. What that enables the item to do is participate in relationships, but those relationships are configured elsewhere. So on our content types menu, there's a separate content type here called stream content. That is actually the connecting content type. So the way mechanics works is that there's actually a third party involved. You have an item on the left and an item on the right, and they're linked together using a third content type. So in this case, we've got a content type called stream content. That defines the stream content relationship. And the important part that has is connector part. And this is where the settings are defined for what type of relationship it is, whether it's many, one-to-one, one-to-many. Many-to-many is kind of automatically supported by this system because obviously you can have as many connecting items as you like. And we also define what content types are allowed on the left-hand side of the relationship, what content types are allowed on the right-hand side. So any of these things can be included in stream contents. We also have something here called the inverse connector type, which defines yet another content type. It's optional to specify it, but sometimes you want to have slightly different behavior on the inverse relationship. Now, the advantage of approaching things this way is that you can store additional data across the relationship. You'll see on the main page, each item is positioned. It has an X and Y coordinate. That data only needs to exist on the relationship. And a particular video might occur in two different channels, and it might be at a different X-Y coordinate. So it's not data I can store on the video. It had to be stored on the actual connector. So on the definition of our connecting content type, we have something called the vector position part, which is a custom part that stores the X-Y coordinate there. So you can see in our content types menu, you can see various other connector definitions like background image, thumbnail. These are all defining the different relationships that can exist that different content items can participate in. So back to my editor. I'm going to add a couple of things. Actually, the easiest way to use this is to just use the web browser search. All right, when I save that item, it now lists. It's now listing the content items that I've connected to, and the UI for this is fairly horrible. It works and it does what we need to do in the back end. Actually, kind of sorting out this mess. Is it in a way not particularly the way I want to go about things. This admin screen ends up being really huge, especially if you're linking a lot of items. I don't think it's really the way to go. What I kind of want to do is have more front end Ajax editing features rather than trying to cram absolutely everything into this one screen. But it is functional. You can use this here. You can see each item has multiple fields that can be edited. These fields are directly editing data on the connector, on the connecting items, these intermediary items. Now, something interesting that's going on here is we're actually editing multiple items at once. When I now save this page, this is updating multiple content items. That's something that's not even normally possible in Orchard because of certain limitations about how content editors are created. This is another problem that I've got around with some custom modules. In particular, there's a module called Origami that does a lot of things to do with being able to render things in different ways, create editors in different ways, and have additional context and a lot of extra features in the rendering process. So I can specify X and Y coordinates on both of these. My connecting items had a title part, so I can actually override the title on an item. So that one will display an overridden title instead of the item's title. And I can publish that. Yeah, you can see it's Orchard 1.3. So we're really ready for an update, and that will hopefully happen within the next fortnight. Right. Okay. That's created my new page and the two items I've linked to it. Now, I mentioned before that this editing screen is really unwieldy, especially something like entering the pixel coordinates that an item is going to display at. I mentioned that I want to do more Ajax editing features in the front end, and something I was able to quite quickly and easily do with an MVC controller is allow this. And that's performed an Ajax call back to the server and updated those fields in the background. If I refresh, they're still at the, oh. No. One of them's at the position I moved it to, the other one's disappeared. Like I say, this is very old versions of these modules now. They're very buggy. Oh yeah, it's still loading. You could be right there. There are some bugs and stability issues, and there are also a certain amount of performance problems in this version. Yeah, I think the page is still loading because the menu hasn't come up yet. Hopefully it hasn't broken the whole menu. So since this version, I've done a lot of rewriting of the code. Also, there's another scenario that I wanted to support. Yeah, that is updating very slowly. So yeah, the code has kind of been massively rewritten, and it is obviously insanely complex, dealing with from one item. I've then got to load up the items, it's the connector items, and then from that do a query of the actual real content items that they're linking to. So it's very difficult kind of getting that performant and optimized. The way it works now is it needs to run two queries. It can do one query to load all the connectors, and then one query, and from that it can harvest the right hand item IDs, and then it can perform one query to load all of those items, because the content manager has a method to load a list of items from IDs. Sorry? You want to see the media garden? Okay. All right, here's Media Garden. The idea with Media Garden was that I wanted to be able to, we want to be able to manage a lot of different types of media, image, video, audio, anything like that. I kind of wanted a fairly simple UI where you could throw files at it and it would know what to do with them. And what I wanted it to do with them is convert them, is to create a content item representing that piece of media. And you can see I've got different content items like image, audio, video. So from the type of media that I give it, it needs to work out which type of content item to create and then create that item. So it means different types of media I can render in different ways as appropriate. I can attach different bits of data to it. For instance, an image has a width and a height. Audio file doesn't have that, but it has a length. So it's useful to have them as different content types for a lot of different reasons. There are two ways to get media into this. We can either upload a file or use files that are already on the server, or we can actually enter a URL to a third-party website. If I do an image search, and we'll get some trees. I want a kind of decent-sized image. Right. So that's one way of pulling in a media file. Hopefully it will work. If anyone does try these modules, obviously there are a huge amount of features, and a lot of them are really quite hard to write tests for. There are always going to be things that might not currently be working properly. I'm not always even using all of the features, so I'll only I haven't used that external URL feature for a while on the latest version. I don't know if that'll be working on the latest version of the code. So obviously it's also going to help me if people can let me know what's not working, and even help fix bugs. So right, I've given it an external URL. It's recognized that that's an image, but if it was wrong, I could tell it, no, that's a video. The main example where that happens a lot is with MP4s. An MP4 can be a video or an audio. And the only way I could tell would be to start actually looking into the file and investigating magic numbers. Sometimes when you're loading something from an external URL, the MIME type might be correct, and we might be able to infer from the MIME type what type of media it is, but a lot of servers are incorrectly configured, and you find all kinds of wacky MIME types coming down, so you can't even rely on that. It's actually very difficult. But one day I'd like to have it investigating from the first couple of 100 bytes of a file. You can actually figure out what type of file it is, but that's also very complicated. You have to start looking for a lot of magic numbers in the file header, and there's huge lists of magic numbers for different types of file formats, but that's kind of not necessary. I can tell it what it is. So it knows it's an image. That's actually a media stereotype, so those are kind of high-level groupings of image, and then I can tell it what content type I want, because you can have two different video content types, and you might want to create different ones at different points. If I don't select anything there, it'll automatically create just an image. Okay, it's worked out the right format there. You can configure multiple different media viewers. This is all the media garden pipeline is hugely extensible. There are all kinds of different ways that you can plug in different viewers. You can create filters to add extra processing at different stages. You might want to extract metadata from an image, things like where it was photographed and things like that. There's kind of hooks to be able to handle all of that kind of metadata processing. Okay, and I can also also this UI is extensible. I could add it's got a system similar to drivers. But this is using something called model drivers, which are also part of the origami module. So model drivers are like content part drivers, but they can be used for any model. You can go render this model, then all these drivers will go, here are bits of UI. So it's doing exactly the same as content part drivers are, but like with external to the content system. So yeah, I could add extra bits of UI here to pre-populate things. The reason for this, you might bulk upload a batch of images, and there'll be a huge screen of images. You could set all the titles and tags. You could input all the titles and tags for them all at once, rather than having to go through and edit each item afterwards. import that. Right. Okay, it doesn't like the external file there. Like I say, it's a long time since I've even tested that. It might be trying to resize the external image, which will probably not work. So I'll show the way we normally bring content in. I could put her on there if you like. Okay. This time I'm going to there. Oh yeah, where's the koala? Yeah. Okay. Let's bring in the koala. This is a multiple file uploader. That was what was the image gallery? I think it was from Gabriello's image gallery. That might have borrowed that. So right, I've uploaded that. Click go. So what it does is whatever file you give it or whatever location you give it, it inspects that and works out what kinds of content it could get from that page. I mean, I kind of wanted to add in filters so you could just put in a web page and then it would give you a big list of all the images off the web page, or you could link to a playlist XML file and it would give you a list of all the files in that playlist, and then from this import screen you could then choose which ones you actually wanted to bring into your content database. So this is I really wanted a lot of flexibility in the system and different ways you could use it. Like I say, we've been getting our particular application working, so a lot of things I wanted to do don't really work very well. But the specific thing of uploading files should work. So there's a koala, and there we have a koala. Right. And that is a content item, comments, ratings. Embed is also a feature of Media Garden. So that gives you embed code for embedding that media in an external website. It actually uses an iframe, so any media should be correctly embeddable through that. And yeah, you can see there it's actually created a resized version of that koala at 720 by 405. So similar to the image processing module, I'm going to consider in the future integrating image processing with this rather than my own custom solution which uses imageresizing.net. But again, it's part of how flexible the pipeline is. It's a separate module. It's called MediaGarden.imageresizing. It's a separate module that once it's enabled, it hooks into the pipeline and resizes images to the size they're being displayed at. Okay, so really that's a good overview of Media Garden and mechanics and what we're doing with Orchard on our website.
So with 1.5, there's a pretty nifty new related content part that's now inherent in the core.
Yep, the content picker.
Content picker, right. Are you going to continue to iterate on your solution, or?
What I don't think the content picker can do is, there's a couple of things that content picker doesn't do as well as mechanics, and it does definitely depend on what you want to do with it. Content picker is definitely very good for just really quickly adding related content fields, and it's probably more performant than mechanics, although there's things you can do with caching, and like the menu in the front end, that's actually cached using another feature of mechanics. The entire rendering of that is cached, because there's a lot of connectors going on there, a lot of content. It takes a while to load, so I cache the rendering of that. The thing I think you couldn't do with the content picker is this, where I've got an X and Y coordinate for each related item. And yeah, basically storing extra data. I assume content picker will have a sequence kind of field, so you can specify what order in the items are in, but I don't think you could then store other extra custom data along with that.
Other questions from the audience?
A solution could be to create another type, which will be the reverse session, and then this type will have the media, and you link to this type to reference stuff. But that's
Right,
one more
yeah.
step to edit instead of this one.
Yeah, and this kind of has that concept built in, basically. This is kind of already rolled into this, and the way that you would generate an editor for that on one page rather than having to sort of juggle multiple editor pages. The other thing this does is it gives you a lot of control over rendering. There's some really very, very complex rendering options that you can do, and it adds a lot of extra options to placement, which are kind of way out of the scope of this demo to show you, but you can kind of do anything with the rendering the way that you're going to render different items that are in relationships.
Do you have any more questions? All right. Pretty awesome. Thank you very much, Pete.